With computational magic, the iPhone 13 Pro is closer than ever to replacing your traditional day-to-day DSLR or mirrorless cameras. My preference that I'm using right now is the Sony ZV-E10, a relatively new release from Sony tailored to the day-to-day content creator. In fact, their marketing pitch is so close to highlighting the TikToker or the YouTuber or the influencer of the day that their product page is just plastered with pictures of people holding it out at arm's length, basically vlogging. Anyway, today I want to shoot some A-roll, B-roll style shots with the iPhone 13 Pro and with the Sony ZV-E10 that's on my tripod right now. See if there's a huge difference, see how close the iPhone truly is getting to replacing cameras like these. Then afterwards, I'll touch on the downsides of an iPhone and of course the downsides of a mirrorless camera like the Sony ZV-E10. Now before we jump in, on the iPhone, we're gonna be using something called cinematic mode. Now if you don't know what cinematic mode is, think of it as portrait mode, but in video. Now this is the first iPhone that cinematic mode was released in, so things are still a little bit buggy and finicky, but we're gonna try and utilize that mode as much as possible because that truly is what makes this phone a differentiator. Now one major downside to cinematic mode is that it cannot be used in 4K just yet, so when you're using cinematic mode, you are stuck at 1080p. And for reference, this camera right now is shooting in 4K. So to compensate for that, I'm gonna be using the iPhone's normal 4K mode as well in some of these shots, but it just isn't as juicy as cinematic mode. For a little detail on the camera that I'm actually using, which is the ZV-E10 like I've said before, I am not using the kit lens on this camera. Now, if you're not a camera guy, you won't know what any of that means. Basically, the kit lens is the lens that comes with the camera, and it's usually not that good. So I went ahead and replaced it with another lens that'll overlay on the screen right now. It is a Sony 24mm f1.8, and I absolutely love this lens. Keep in mind though that the body of this camera is about $800, and then the lens of that camera is like another $600, I believe. I'll put all the prices on the screen right now. So this is not a cheap rig, but if it can even come close to what this is putting out right now, I will be thoroughly impressed. Now for reference, f1.8 you could think of as the amount of blur between the subject and the background. So the lower the F number, the more blur you get, the more creamy videos tend to look. So just for reference, here's a shot at f1.8, and here's a shot at f5.6. The higher the number, the less bokeh, which is the less blurry goodness going on behind you. But first, and most importantly, let's show off some B-roll. I think that's the most fun things that basically any YouTuber or anybody loves to shoot. Each of these shots will be done 3 different times, one on the Sony ZV-E10, one on the iPhone with cinematic mode, and one on the iPhone as well in a normal 4K video mode. All right, let's go ahead and jump right into it. What did you think? What did you prefer? I haven't seen them yet, so I have no idea, but maybe you have a better idea of what everything looks like. From past experience, cinematic mode tends to look really good sometimes, but other times it sort of just fizzles out in usability, so maybe you'll be able to see those shots in the ones that I just did. So now we're gonna test these same shots except in a studio format. So basically how the camera is right now, we're gonna test it with obviously the camera I'm shooting with currently and with the iPhone, both in cinematic mode and in the normal 4K video mode. Now you've seen the camera basically this entire video, so let's go ahead and just switch this guy up. Okay, this is very scary because I'm balancing my phone on my camera because I didn't have another set, but this is what cinematic mode on the iPhone 13 Pro looks like. Now I have it right above my traditional camera, so let me just swap back right now. And this is what it looked like before. So cinematic mode, don't know what it looks like because I don't have a little flip out screen, so I can't really tell what's going on. But I'm hoping it looks even decent. I know you could see a lot more of the room while this camera's really more punched in, and that's because that's a 24mm lens. The traditional one on the iPhone, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'll overlay right here. It is a longer field of view. Okay, so let's keep it like this for a second with cinematic mode, and let me just touch on, again, the fact that cinematic mode is stuck to 1080p. Now, this is a problem because most everything is shot in 4K or even higher these days. 1080p is not bad, but when you compare it to something that is twice or more as sharp than what 1080p is, it tends to just fizzle out. Now let's go ahead and switch up the iPhone into its normal 4K video mode. Okay, now here's the iPhone in 4K. And from the last shot, I'm starting to realize that it maybe was a little bit too far for how cinematic mode and the iPhone's field of view tends to look. So let me go ahead and bring this whole set just a little bit closer. Okay, here's the iPhone just a little bit closer in 4K mode, and maybe you can see the difference between cinematic, maybe not, I'm not too sure. Can't see anything that's going on right now on the screen. But in this same close-up field of view, I do want to switch back to cinematic mode and see if it really does make a difference if the camera is closer or if it's further away. Okay, and once again, here is cinematic mode in this more close-up field of view. Let me know if it can pair up to the traditional mirrorless or DSLR cameras that you guys might have. And now let me switch back and let's talk about the pros and cons once more of having a mirrorless camera versus having just an iPhone. So after taking a quick peek at cinematic mode, at the 4K mode versus a traditional camera, which I know the look of at this point, it seems clear that cinematic mode still is not 100% usable. There were a lot of moments where my ears were kind of out of focus, or some random parts of me were just not in focus, which does not look professional. But overall, I think for the B-roll shots, for the types of shots where it's not your main shooter, where it's not your main camera, it does perform really well. So if anything, this could replace your secondary camera or your third camera, just to prevent you from having to lug around an entire rig, but rather just one main camera and an iPhone for all your secondary shots. Now the 4K mode on the iPhone did look very crisp. I mean, it is 4K, it matches up in the quality aspect, but what I really thought was lacking was that blurriness, was that bokeh, and you just did not get that with the iPhone at its current state. So while yes, the iPhone could potentially replace cameras for a lot of people, for the type of YouTube setups and reviews and making cinematic videos, I just don't think it's fully there yet, but I definitely do see it coming in the next few years. Also, it's just simply the fact that cameras like these, cameras like the ZV-E10 are big. There's no doubt about it. They are very large cameras versus just carrying around your phone with you, which you already do anyway. So there is that big convenience factor. Having to carry around a camera versus having to carry around nothing extra is drastically better for a lot of people. Imagine having to bring your camera everywhere you want to shoot a video versus just literally taking a phone right out of your pocket and being already done and ready to go to shoot whatever content you want to make. It is definitely a big deal. But anyway, I hope this video helped you. I hope it helped you come to a decision on if you really do need a camera or if your iPhone is good enough. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving it a like and consider subscribing, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.